want to just welcome everyone to the call. We're doing it obviously via video, which is exciting, and trying out a new webinar technology with Zoom. I don't know about you all, but my technology skills have had to ramp up the last month for sure to keep up. But want to just let everybody know, for folks who might be on who aren't familiar with Colorado Business Roundtable, we're a public policy organization in Colorado comprised of executives from some of the state's largest employers, and we work to strengthen Colorado's economic vitality. So it's no surprise that partners like Betsy with OEDIT are big partners, and we're very big allies of the work that she and her team do every day. We work to improve the business climate with other strategic allies, from the philanthropic community to higher ed to other government agencies and other business community groups to amplify the voice of business. So today we're here. I'd love to introduce our special guests and have a briefing and give you both time to give some remarks and then open it up for Q&A as well. We are taping the conversation, so we'd love to send it out to folks who weren't able to make the call and just wanted some additional information. So if that's okay, I'll do introductions and turn it over to you two at this point. First, I'd love to introduce to you all Betsy Markey. She is the Executive Director of the Office of Economic Development and International Trade, commonly known as OEDIT. She was appointed by Governor Jared Polis to his cabinet as the Executive Director of the organization in January of 2019. And she has over 30 years experience of leadership in the government and the private sector. She has served as a member of Congress, a senior federal executive, and the co-founder and CFO of a high-tech company, and has an incredibly impressive resume, and we're really honored that she's willing to serve in this capacity for Colorado, and probably at no more critical time than you've seen economically than this, I'm afraid. Next, I want to introduce Glenn Plagens. He's the Director of Business Support and Rural Prosperity, also with OEDIT. Glenn is responsible for 4 major programs within the department: employee ownership, minority business office, rural economic development, and the Small Business Development Center. Previously, Glenn was the Senior Director at the Front Range Community College, North Metro Denver SBDC, and the Larimer SBDC, responsible for the strategic direction, budget, and performance of those entities. And prior to that, also worked in the private sector. So welcome to Betsy and Glenn. We're honored that you're with us today to give us an update. And I'd love to hear a little bit about, for folks who aren't familiar with OEDIT, what's OEDIT like on a normal day? You know, a normal year, plenty on your plate, right? And now add this layer of COVID. So maybe talk about what your normal role is, and then we'd love to shift and hear a little bit about what you're responsible for in terms of response and trying to help Colorado get back on its feet. But welcome so much. Thank you. Great.
Thank you, Debbie. And thanks for inviting us to be on. And gosh, what do we do on a regular basis? It seems like so long ago for the pre-COVID days. But, you know, of course, as you mentioned, the Office of Economic Development and International Trade is our mission is to help those businesses to succeed basically in the domestic market and globally as well. I'll talk to you a little bit about some of the different offices within OEDIT. First, we have our tourism office, the Colorado Tourism Office, which is probably our largest office. You know, Colorado last year saw 185,000 people visit the state. We're one of the top destinations in the country for travelers, both domestically and overseas. And it's a $23 billion industry for Colorado. So we work hard to make sure that we are presenting Colorado in a good light, that people are coming here to recreate responsibly. One of our big programs this year was our Leave No Trace to make sure that travelers know that they should also be sensitive to making sure we're protecting the great assets that people come here for as well. And of course, with COVID-19, the hospitality and the tourism industry has been a particularly hard hit. So we've got a long way to go to make sure that we get that industry up and running again, which is so important for Colorado's economy. We also have the Office of Film and Creative Industries. We get money from the NEA, National Endowment for the Arts, as well. And, you know, we've got Colorado actually has the #1 arts participation in the country. And we know that the arts are an important economic development tool as well. So that is one industry that we're particularly focused on. And we know that particularly in rural areas, how important it is for the arts organization to have a robust community. So we work with local artist organizations, arts organizations around the state of Colorado, and our film office as well, how important it is to bring those films to Colorado, which have such important return on investment and
We'll give it just a minute. I think we had a freeze.
overseas. I'll let Glenn talk a little bit about his program, but we also have a business funding and incentives office that works on programs like Enterprise Zone, Job Growth Incentive Tax Credit, and the like. So that's sort of a brief overview of some of the things that we're doing in OEDIT, but I'm going to have Glenn's is a particularly big area, so I want him to talk a bit about that.
Yeah, so, and on a normal day, I'd like to say we run at about 25%. Now we're probably at 200. So standing up a lot of resources. The business support division is focused on just that, supporting the small businesses of the state of Colorado. I'm going to point to some resources as well during this time to make some folks on the line available or aware of what we've got going on. But really in the beginning of this, what we did is we started, I believe it was on Monday, March 9th, starting to react to this and looking what was happening, and then help start up the EIDL program for the state March 13th, Friday through the Tuesday. And during that time period as well, we started to put together kind of what our strategy was short term for reacting to the particular crisis. One of the programs I manage is the Small Business Development Center Network. And we have one-on-one consultants that meet around the state, about 300 people in the network, and they have free one-on-one consulting. And so far during this crisis, we've provided probably a little over 4,000 consulting hours in direct relation to the Small Business Administration's funding programs and things of that nature. The website for the Colorado Small Business Development Center is coloradospdc.org. It's coloradospdc.org. And please, if you know of a small business that we can help, our one-on-one consulting is free. Within a week of the crisis, our network went to a virtual platform. So within a week, we were able to perform all our consulting sessions. I talked to one of our bilingual consultants, so we offer that as well, Jesse Esparza, yesterday. And Jesse's basically started off at 6 a.m. yesterday, and he said he finished at 7. So probably have not captured all that time in our database yet, so I'm sure it's well over 4,000 hours. But if you know of a business that is having problems or would like to just have one-on-one consulting sessions unpacking what the different Small Business Administration programs are with regard to the payment protection loans, the EIDL loans, banks that we can point to. We work with a lot of local banks in those areas that perhaps your bank isn't lending or participating. We can probably take care of that so that we can point you to a bank that is participating at this point. The other thing that we have as well as an office is the ChooseColorado.com website, and that also has a lot of the resources. Both of them I want to pay particular attention to. Both of them have a thing listed called Other Funding Resources. And as of this morning, we've identified 170 different grants and loan programs above and beyond what the SBA has that can help small businesses in the field. And really this is, as we know, about extending cash flow, weathering this this particular storm out, and getting the business owner back into the, the new normal or the opening of their business. And within that context, a lot of times companies, they might not qualify for some of the SBA programs. So this is a really great funding list to take a look at. The other office that we have is the Minority Business Office, and that's mbocolorado.com. MBOcolorado.com is working really with a lot of key stakeholders within the state, providing the educational materials, and then they also provide the one-on-one consulting that a company would need during this time of crisis. And then the other thing too that I like to mention during these meetings is super important. Obviously, these programs that were stood up were intended for you to take care of your workforce. And there's a lot of tools out there. If you need, like I said, guidance through that, the SBDC has consultants that can help with that. But the other thing is too, is employee ownership is something that in the future is going to come, in part of what I manage at the office is going to become really important, because it's a way to really activate and really energize your employees as we start this recovery process.
Thanks for both of you on that. It sounds like Glenn covered quite a bit of the recovery efforts for OEDIT. What I find interesting too about both of your bios, Betsy and Glenn, are you have roots in the private sector. So probably you've got a deep understanding of what businesses are needing, not only from, oh, there goes my dog too. Here we are, we're all working from different areas. But I think that's really important that you bring that private sector experience too. It probably brings you some really interesting, not only empathy for what business is going through, but also the pragmatic of what they need to kind of get up and running. And I don't know if you can address some of that as well, of what kind of that knowledge on the ground, so to speak.
Yeah, so my husband and I started a small technology company in the late 1980s, and it was going along on a really great path. We had actually purchased another small company, website development firm, and then the dot-com boom bust of the late 90s happened, and all of a sudden, the value of the company just plummeted, within a couple of days. We understand how, and really one of the lessons for us is to make sure that we are diversified, that we can't, just sell one product. We can't just be focused on one area because, those things can come and go. And that was a good lesson for me. Is not, we gotta diversify our company a little bit more too, as well in terms of our product line, so that we're not putting all of our eggs in one basket. And I think that's been important at OEDIT too. And I know that over the last, certainly prior before I came, there has been a concerted effort over the last decade, certainly since the Great Recession, to diversify Colorado's economy, to be able to absorb economic disruptions as they occur. And I think we have done a good job of that. I mean, we used to be really sort of an energy-driven economy back in the 1980s and 1990s. We have really focused on those industries that are the good paying jobs, that are the industries where there's a lot of growth potential, where the state already has strength. And we call that part of that is our advanced industry program. So focusing on advanced manufacturing, the biosciences, high tech, electronics, aerospace. These are all really important industries for Colorado. They provide good paying jobs. We already have good infrastructure in those. And as much as we can to expand those helps our economy to weather some of the economic downturns. And I think poises Colorado well also to recover from the pandemic, with these kinds of different industry sectors that are strong. A lot of the employees in these sectors are able to telecommute, which is great, because we want to continue to make sure as our businesses are starting to reopen on Monday. As you know, guidance has come out for the safer at home guidelines, where offices are able to open at 50% capacity as long as different social distancing and other requirements are in place, but we still are encouraging those companies that can allow their employees to work at home to continue to do that. And we are fortunate that we do have quite a few companies because of the space that they're in that are able to do that.
Tell us, and I see there's already some questions coming in, and I want to be real respectful to your time and what you've got going, but tell us a little bit, if you will. I know that you've sought input from the private sector as you're putting together plans, safer from home, whether it's your office, the governor's office, lots of different types of reach out, I think, to all all different types of sectors, private industry, philanthropic, for example. And I believe, tell us what's under your purview, Betsy. I believe it is the Governor's Council on Economic Stabilization and Growth, and what's happening with that particular council.
Yeah. So that's a private sector council made up of it's really private industry folks, labor organizations. We have local elected officials, state legislators on there as well, to provide recommendations on how to get our economy going again. Right now, there's various committees on things like infrastructure, telecom, energy, small business and entrepreneurship, tourism, outdoor recreation, and those groups are forming short, medium, and long-term recommendations for the governor to consider to help us get out of this, again, to help get the economy back on track. So it's sort of those ideas are being generated. And as you mentioned, there has been a lot of stakeholder engagement, basically in all areas of the economy as we're looking to reopen up, whether it's K through 12, child care, higher ed, office-based businesses, healthcare, those types of things. There's been a lot of engagement with the private sector on, okay, this is a guidance we're thinking of. How do you react to that? What are we missing? What is too stringent? What is not there? So that's been going on for the last couple of weeks, so that the state government was in a good position on Monday to issue those guidance for various parts of the economy.
Perfect, wonderful. Anything else to add, Glenn, or we'll open it up to questions? Or
yeah, I just wanted to just briefly say, like, just to echo Betsy's comments in the beginning, is I was a business owner for 23 years and went through the 2008 downturn. My business experienced over a 50% loss in sales in 24 hours, and went from a $3 million company to about a $1.5 million company overnight. So when you talk, or when people plug into our SBDC network, we have directors that have gotten economic injury disaster loans before. There's a lot of experience there. And as I talk to groups, what I'm really saying and really want to get across is the fact that please don't feel like you have to go through this alone. Part of you being a business owner is using your resources. And at this particular time, please reach out to us. We're here to help. And the other thing is too, is the things and the programs that we're designing from our past experiences. I sat down about probably 2 or 3 days into this and actually started to write notes. And I said, if I could tell myself now, 20 years ago, what would I have told myself with what I know now going through what we're going through? And we had that type of discussion within our network. So a lot of the tools and the things we're putting together are based on that assumption of, we've gone through this before. I mean, this is much worse, obviously, but what is it that the business owners need? And we're designing those programs and tools right now.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective, especially representing the business community. But I think we all take a deep breath and understand that first and foremost, we're in a health pandemic, and we have to really understand what's going on in terms of suffering and what's going on in terms of health impacts. And then it's interesting also to think about how the economic parallel devastation for a lot of business owners, large and small, is kind of running parallel. So your ability to it's an interesting place to be, and I think such a time for leadership. And so we need it more than ever. And again, we're grateful for all that you both do for our state and for the governor's response as well. It's just an unusual time, like you said. It'll be interesting to look back 20 years from now, hopefully, and tell people about how we solved these problems and Colorado came out stronger. So with that, I want to open it up for questions for the attendees today. We are in webinar mode, just to remind you. So the only folks on video are Betsy and I and Glenn today. And then we're going to open it up to unmute. And then if you ask a question in the chat feature, that might be easier. I'll just call on you to give your question to Betsy and Glenn, and we'll kind of go from there. So I'm going to, first of all, I see Polly Lawrence is on the call, and Polly had a question. Polly, I'm going to unmute you and see if you'd be willing to ask your question to our guests.
Well, good morning, and thank you for taking time to do this webinar. I think there's a lot of questions from business owners across the state as we're dealing with COVID and the new restrictions that we're all under right now. I own a small business, and I'm just wondering if the state is looking at specific rules for small businesses. I mean, right now the rules are pretty much a broad brush, but each business has its own parameters, and I'm just wondering if there are going to be any adjustments made to accommodate an individual situation so those companies will be able to survive this.
I'll start on that. Well, I think it really depends on the type of business that you are. Are you a wedding venue planner? Are you a small tech company? Are you in the real estate? So I think it really depends on the sector too. Do you have a child care facility as a small business? So the guidance that has been issued right now is pretty, and it's all, and this is all very detailed online. If you go to colorado.gov/COVID, safer at home, there is specific guidance and public health orders and guidance for lots of different industry sectors. Of course, this is just the beginning. This has been, Colorado is one of the first states to really put out this comprehensive guidance for reopening strategies of different sectors of the economy. And we want to work with businesses of all types. If you go online and you don't see the type of guidance that you're looking for, you've got questions, we're happy to answer that. We're going to be continuing to work with our stakeholders to refine the guidance as well. And in addition, these are the state guidance. Communities, different counties across the state are looking to, as you know, in Denver, impose longer guidance in terms of when businesses can reopen. There have been counties that have asked for waivers to do things a little bit differently from the state, and that's appropriate and acceptable as well. Two counties in particular, I believe Mesa and Eagle County, are asking for waivers from some of the state guidance, and they can do that if their local elected officials or county commissioners and city council and the local public health authority has approved a variance to the state guidance. So there is that process to go through as well. So again, if you're in a business, if you go online and you don't see guidance for your particular sector, please reach out and let us know. We're just really at the beginning of this process and looking for input from small business owners.
Thank you, Polly. And Polly is not only a business owner, but a former state legislator. So
yes, of course. Great, thank you.
Next, I want to see if Christy Lee would be willing. It looks like she's typed in a couple questions. And Christy, I see you two different places here in the webinar, so I'm going to unmute. Hopefully I got you unmuted and would love to have your feedback. Christy Lee is with Lockheed Martin.
Hi, Debbie. Actually, Joe Rice submitted those, but I think I registered for him, so it's under his name, so I'll do my best to read his mind. So just a quick question following up to what Polly Lawrence just asked. As we go through these safer at home orders, some of what has come out on those orders have been quite challenging, especially to us with some of the requirements to reopen when you have thousands of people at one location, such as temperature screening and those types of things. Do you have a role working with CDPHE on these requirements? And then who would be the contact that we would reach out to if we had concerns or wanted to work on some of these to make them work the best? Because we have a lot of procedures in place, and we've been very, we've had very good outcomes. We've had no transmission in our workplace. We've been disinfecting all over every day. So we have a lot of procedures in place, and we think we can do it in a manner.
Yeah, so all different cabinet offices in the state have been involved, but really the guidance is based on the health data that is coming out of CDPHE. So they would be the ones, again, that if there's any, if anyone is looking for a waiver or variance from the guidance, that has to go through CDPHE. And again, it is based on healthcare data that we're doing and the modeling that we are doing. And by the way, Christy, I know Lockheed has really done a great job. Joe is fantastic to work with, by the way. And I believe he, or maybe you were on a call with a business leader call on Monday about, using Lockheed as a model of some of the things that you are implementing at your work sites currently as you reopen to comply with these strategies. So really appreciate the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
And Christy, did you have a second question either from you or from Joe that you wanted to put forward?
Yes. So understanding many of Colorado's post-performance incentives, like the job growth incentive tax credit that were put in place during the Great Recession and have proved successful in creating jobs that otherwise wouldn't exist. What do you anticipate with programs like JGITC, Jumpstart, and the Advanced Industries Grant Program, given the current economic crisis?
Right. Well, as you know, we're facing a huge budget shortfall, and looking at all kinds of ways to make sure that, we, by statute, have to present a balanced budget. However, I will mention things like the JGITC, and I haven't heard of that at all being, basically what I want to say is the incentives for businesses in Colorado are modest and performance-based. So, for instance, a very successful, and I know Lockheed participates in this, job growth incentive tax credit. You'll get a tax credit, but it's after you have that person on the job for a year and they're already paying taxes, spending money in their community. So these are really, I would consider part of recovery incentives, and really important to continue to make sure that we are growing our businesses, that we're creating those jobs that are needed to help get us out of this crisis right now. And that being said, with all, I know there's a lot of so many companies are struggling across the state. Glenn's team is doing a really fantastic job navigating through this crisis. Nonetheless, we still have some companies who are looking to grow in Colorado, looking at some expansion, looking at moving in from another state. And so Colorado, just because I think we do have a very business-friendly environment, and we've got good, solid incentives, are still looking to come to Colorado and expand. So we're happy about that part.
That's actually good news. You're still, you're dealing with the current crisis, but you're still trying to woo more industry to the state. So that's actually really good.
We are.
You need more on your plate. Glenn, I think we have time for a couple more questions. I have one, Glenn, and if anybody else wants to throw one in the chat feature, feel free to do it now. I think we need to let you go in a few minutes, don't we, Betsy, to get back to work? But
yeah.
Okay. I'll ask one on rural, and then we'll give the attendees one more chance. Glenn, tell us a little bit about the scope of what your work is, for rural Colorado. How does rural Colorado face this issue? How does it compare to suburbia, downtown? How do you all look at the whole state, because we're so different all across the state?
Yeah, the industry, the way that tourism, obviously in Western Colorado being just such a huge industry and being impacted by that, our tourism office, along with we have 3 rural opportunity representatives that service rural Colorado, and we're working with our tourism office on, just like Betsy says, what does it take to get that back to 100% and beyond within rural Colorado, so we can rely on that as an economic driver. Eastern Colorado, where we work a lot with USDA and some of the different programs within Eastern Colorado. And then really the small business communities and the Main Street communities, we do a lot of work with our rural opportunity representatives and with our Small Business Development Center, in partnership a lot of times with DOLA and some of the other state agencies, to really help those businesses that are most impacted in those communities. And, you know, some of the challenges, obviously, right now, it is about extension of cash flow and getting through and weathering the storm. But there's a fair amount, especially with the team that Betsy oversees, the governor's emergency response, or the emergency response team that I sit on, has to do a small business, fair amount of response, creating a loan fund that will be announced probably in the next month or so, and to help fill some of the gaps. There will be rural cutouts for that loan fund as well, to help with some of the gaps that maybe the SBA funding did not service. The other thing is too, is making the connections. We've worked with Startup Colorado, and we have community meetings based on Northeast, South, and West, or the corners of the state for the rural communities, where we're bringing the resources on a weekly basis. Every Friday, I can provide that information afterwards to send out to the group. But these are a time for the rural communities to really come together, be in the same room, listen to about a half-hour update and some of the different things that we're putting together in the statewide resources that are there, so we can make sure it's easier sometimes to reach the Front Range. So these are really designed to make sure everybody is being reached. And then what happens is we have a facilitation group that comes in, and we have a two-way discussion, and then that drives us for our next week, and then also gives us the information and the intelligence we need to say, okay, maybe there's a gap here, or we need to start doing a different job here, or provide this particular program. The small business team that I'm on too, that's being led by Brad Feld within our committee, they'll be launching a website soon to aggregate a lot of the resources and a lot of the things that we have, and that team has been inventing over the last 3 to 4 weeks. There's about 150 volunteers on our team right now, putting the website together, putting different components together, and putting different programs together, expanding the reach of the SBDC. There's actually melting together about 6 mentor networks on that website, and the mentor networks are talking, and we're figuring out where our lanes are, and we all have one thing in common. We want to mentor and really consult with the businesses at a super high level going forward, so they can really make sure that people understand what their resources are. My biggest kind of quest during this entire thing is to say, I don't want afterwards to say, okay, a company got left behind, or there was a resource that we could apply just because the company didn't hear about it. So a lot of, coming on these meetings, a dozen or so at least, and doing these is about just, please, if everybody on the call, if you know of a business, tell them about choosecolorado.com. Tell your local community, make sure that they know about the Colorado SBDC network, make sure they know about the work OEDIT's doing. And, we're all in this together, and I've just never seen the hyper collaboration that's happened at the level that we have, especially around the small business community. It's really great to see.
It's really wonderful to see. And I think even the big business community relies on small business. I always say, I think about some larger businesses that have supply chain that employ hundreds of small businesses within Colorado. So there's a really interesting interconnectivity to business in general.
Yeah.
Betsy, any closing remarks from you for the attendees today? And we're excited to be able to have you here to give us kind of, the information as you see it, and how we can be helpful to you as the business community as well.
Well, I just want to thank you again. It's important for us to hear from the business community, to let the business community know what we're doing, so we don't have this sort of vacuum of a lot of information that's not being distributed and disseminated. So appreciate this opportunity, and happy to come back anytime. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we at the Colorado Business Roundtable appreciate your willingness to partner with the business community and your service on behalf of our great state. We're hoping to see something on the other side. One more quick question. If there's a business member who hasn't had a chance to weigh in and maybe has a great idea, I'm hearing this from lawmakers, people in the government, all kinds of agencies who are saying, give us your ideas. We want ideas on short and long-term economic recovery. Now, you've got plenty of people already involved, but if there's someone out there who says, I've got the best idea ever, where could they send that to?
Well, I promise everyone on this call that wasn't a plant by Debbie, because I should have mentioned this. So the Governor's Council on Economic Stabilization, we have a website. You just go to choosecolorado.com, and you could go to CESG, which is Council on Economic Stabilization of Growth. So that's choosecolorado.com. CESG, and that's the council's website. It has various committees, people who are serving on it. It has initial recommendations that have been made and approved by the governor. But if you go to the very bottom of that page, it says, give us your recommendations. So click on that. We're getting a lot of recommendations from the business community, from the general public as well. We are, a lot of them are actually excellent ideas that we're vetting through our various committees that are going through the governor. So we do have a way for the public to submit their recommendations on how to get the economy moving again, and we welcome those.
Perfect. I think I was a plant, but that's all good. We're giving our feedback. I just think, you know what, as we said, we're all in this together. We all want Colorado to come out of this stronger than ever, and we've got to get our business community back to work safely to provide opportunities for Coloradans. So
right.
At the end of the day, and again, Betsy Markey, thank you so much for your time, and Glenn Plagens with OEDIT. And thanks everyone for joining this call with Colorado Business Roundtable. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.